You're listening to the Renegade Blitz podcast, a podcast for Steelers fans by Steelers fans. Follow us on Twitter at Renegade Blitz, read articles on renegadeblitz.com, and like us on Facebook. And welcome back to the Renegade Blitz podcast. I'm Ty Polk, joined by Chris Ward. We were going to preview the Steelers versus Titans game with Teron Davenport, ESPN Nation Titans reporter, but a COVID-19 outbreak has hit the Titans, and for the past couple days moved the game from Sunday to Monday, and now this game will be postponed. The game between the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Tennessee Titans has been rescheduled for Week 7th on October 25th at 1 p.m. The Steelers and Baltimore Ravens game will move to November 1st at 1 p.m. Week 8 had been the bye week. Week 8 has been the bye week for both Pittsburgh and Baltimore. When the logistics are officially figured out, we will have Teron on to preview Steelers versus Titans in the future. As of this podcast reporting, 6 staff members and 7 players for the Titans have tested positive for COVID-19. None have tested positive on the Vikings. Those cases for the Titans are confirmed positive tests, meaning they are not false positives. Both teams have closed their practice facilities until Saturday. On the subject of false positives, Texans head coach Bill O'Brien said on Wednesday they had 2 false positive tests before their game against the Steelers. Coincidentally, they face the Vikings this Sunday, and the league plans for those 2 teams to play at their regularly scheduled time. Chris, what are your thoughts on this coronavirus outbreak for the Titans and how it could affect the Steelers season?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a crazy week during this week with the Titans news. It's a tough situation because, we are living in a global pandemic right now. So, you don't know if the Titans, broke any type of protocol or foul play where they messed up, or it was just, regular, teams have been traveling and stuff and someone got it and, contracted over time to other people and it spread out through the whole entire, really organization. But for the Steelers season, they have an early bye week, which was unexpected. And, for the players, they just have to mentally get that in their mind that, this is our bye week, we will take our rest this week. And, there's nothing you could do about it. You knew going into the season that it's an unusual year and, things like this might have happened. So you just have to adjust on the fly or, be light on your feet, as Tomlin said. And then, Tomlin said at his press conference, we don't care. We could play 13 straight games without a break. They're just going to go with what the situation became and make the best out of it.
Well, we were talking about last week, and especially after the Texans game where the Steelers went 3-0. This was the first time since 2010 that the Steelers went 3-0, and they went to the Super Bowl. The last time the Steelers had a bye week on week 4, they not only went to the Super Bowl, they won the Super Bowl. They played 17 straight weeks of football because remember, it's the year where the Steelers went on that magical 6th seed run.
Yeah, that was an unbelievable year there. And it just shows, the Steelers, they have the talent. They're, currently 3-0 right now. So maybe they could make a run like that 05 team did. But, it's going to take a lot of mental toughness, a lot of luck too in some ways. You can't have any injuries, key injuries. And you just have to be a team and build off of this, adversity and build on it and become better from it. But, since 1990, with the byes, the Steelers have had 8 bye weeks in week 4 earlier, and they made the playoffs 5 times on those occasions. So, twice they lost in the AFC Championship game was 97 to the Broncos and then 2001 to the Patriots. And then, like you mentioned, the 05 team went all the way to the Super Bowl and won it. So, last time, I think 2012 was the last time they had a week 4 bye, and they actually, ironically, they played the Eagles in week 5 after that, which they beat them 16-14. But so they finished that season 8-8, so they didn't have success like they did in the other years. But yeah, I mean, it's a tough deal that the Steelers were handed here, but I don't think they're going to be making excuses out of it.
They certainly haven't had it, and of course, again, you said it with Tomlin. They don't care, and so it's certainly great. But there's one person that, well, if there's one group of people that care, it's the Steelers fans. I haven't had the chance to necessarily look at all the traffic that our page has gotten, because a lot of us have decided to have a more this should have been forfeited type of approach towards thinking, and we have similar thoughts shared with Dejan Koechevich, but of course another person, Mark Madden, didn't exactly agree with us.
Nah, he didn't. Yeah, like if you read Dayon's article on DK Pittsburgh Sports, it's pretty good art. It lays out. He has Mike Vrabel's interview on there, which is kind of his answers and stuff. Weren't as thorough as you might expected, but you kind of can see where Dayon's coming from, because there was 3 coaches that got fined for not wearing masks or wearing masks properly in week 2. So, and there's been issues with the Raiders and stuff, and John Gruden's mask. So are the coaches, are they actually enforcing these policies that the NFL has handed out, and are they really going through them by the order? Because I've read or heard that some team or some people in the NFL, they might be relaxing because there hasn't been any cases up until now. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, so far so good, but certainly they have to remember that the MLB had cases that, if you remember being around town here, it basically knocked about 15 or so games out of the St. Louis Cardinals season.
Yeah.
That's one of those things, and with the Titans, this might stretch into 2 weeks. This could be going into 2 team seasons, rescheduling games like this. And I want to get your thoughts on this. What do you think the NFL schedule makers will do to fix future postponements, especially after bye weeks are finished?
Yeah, they're in a real tough situation, I think, with the Titans, especially if they can't play the Bills in week 5, because that's 2 weeks now that they haven't played a game. Are they going to have a week 18 to make up that Bills game potentially, and for further games too, if anybody has a COVID outbreak, and then teams have to make up games. I think the NFL really, what they should have done was have 2 bye weeks for each team, and have that week 18 schedule laid out just in case if there was potential outbreak with coronavirus, so teams can make those games up.
I was hearing that people were suggesting almost universal weeks off for the NFL, where there's just one weekend where there's absolutely no games whatsoever. That's what I was seeing on Twitter. And
so they would have, each team would have 15 games?
No, universal, they would stretch back the entire season and have weeks designated for in case a COVID outbreak hit. And I want you to know this, and for our audience to know this. Yes, the Super Bowl does have a set date. They still have authority to move that back.
Yeah.
And really, the only question they could potentially have, I know we're putting wrestling into a second consecutive podcast, but it depends on, and they're out in LA this year anyway, but it depends. The city of Tampa was hosting WrestleMania, and that's still another thing on the line. But I don't think, even if they had those clusters where COVID happened and the Super Bowl would be played the latest it's ever been, maybe March or something like that.
Yeah, it was late February. I think I saw it was the one of the dates. I think that they could push it back, and they would probably do that because they want to have that 2 week build up to the Super Bowl, which is kind of unnecessary. But the NFL is going to do it for marketing and TV purposes and just to build up the game, in general. But yeah, it's definitely going to be interesting to see how this schedule breaks out, and if the Titans don't play on this week or next week when week 5, I think that's going to cause some potential. Like, what do you do? Do you like do the Bills only? Excuse me. Do the Titans only play 15 games, and then just like the Bills get two bye weeks, and then the Titans make the playoffs. They go off of like certain percentage of their win base, even though they played 15 games and all the other teams played 16.
Yeah, it certainly sets a precedent, especially with this. Again, the league is very lucky that, for the most part, I believe that I think I'm not. Do not quote me on this, but I'm pretty sure divisions share a bye week because
Hmm.
the Ravens and the Steelers originally were going to play each other week 7, and then both were going to have week 8 off. And as you know, Steelers versus Ravens, the most physical games on the schedule, no doubt.
Yeah, and that game's going to come after a Titans game too. And now that the Ravens are going to week 7 for their bye week, they'll be coming off a bye, and they'll be at Baltimore too against Pittsburgh that week. So, that's a tough test for the Steelers. And if if they lose that game, Steeler fans on Twitter and all social media platforms are going to be complaining about it.
Absolutely. Well, I want to get your opinion on this. Do you think it's fair that the Steelers have to go on an early bye week for this, especially when they were told to practice as if the game was still going to happen on Sunday?
It's tough, as far as fair, because this year is unusual and, there's a pandemic going on. So, I don't want to really put blame unless there is clear negligence by the Titans. If that was the case, then they should probably have to forfeit, I would think. If the Titans, had players going out to bars or whatever, and they were breaking that's a team issue. That's not a Steelers issue. So that's on the Titans. And I wish that what they would have done was push it back to week 18 because, it would be hard to imagine another case like this not coming back up again for any other NFL teams. So I wish they would have moved the Steelers Titans game to week 18 if they have that in their plans.
Yeah, it's ironic that this year we're starting the format of an extra playoff team, so that means that now everyone has to fight for the number 1 seed. And so now there's just more to it for the Steelers. It's like they've got to play almost perfect in their own division to do this in a 13 straight weeks.
Yeah.
But also you'd think if they'd add an extra game, and especially with the preseason being shelved due to COVID, why not let a 22-week or an 18-week season fly?
Yeah.
It makes sense because of this. I certainly hope that we're never going to see this again in our lifetime, and I'm fairly confident that this is never going to happen again. But it's just like there's just certain things in there where the NFL had to go like, okay, what if there is a COVID outbreak?
Yeah. And I think why they didn't do that with just like a week 18 instead of having they would have to have 2 bye weeks, I think, and plus the week 8, because then they'll look at like competitive advantages. Because say if the Steelers Titans game was moved to week 18, then they would look, okay, the Steelers have like 2 bye weeks. So, they're not playing week 4, and then they're not going to play week 8, so they have an advantage against the Eagles in week 5 or something like that. So that's why I think that from the get-go, they should have had every team had 2 bye weeks and have that week 18 schedule for makeup games.
And of course, the big thing going into this Steelers-Eagles clash next week is the possibility of fans attending in Heinz Field. Art Rooney II is calling for 12,000 fans to attend the stadium. So far, it looks good, but we've had to wait for the governor and the powers that be in Pennsylvania to give the okay for the Steelers to have fans in the arena in Heinz Field. Chris, at any point during this COVID situation, for the Steelers. Did you think that was going to perhaps affect Art Rooney's ability to put fans in the stands for next week?
Yeah, I thought by now, like I kind of understood, the first two games in September because we didn't really know back in August or whatever when they made the decision to have no fans in September. We didn't really see other teams do it, but now that we've seen other teams do it, and it seemed like went fine. Like you could have 12,000 people at Heinz Field and space them out and have them in pods like they plan on doing. Like and then everyone's wearing masks, and if you're separated, by a distance and with the seats and everything, like I don't see that as an issue. I think the biggest issue is like bathrooms, and I don't know if the food, are they going to be serving food there, and when they're in line to get tickets, because that's when you could be close together and be in that 6 foot range where you're close to people and stuff. So I think that's the biggest worry, probably with the Pennsylvania Health Department, the Department of Health. But Rooney makes a good point where like across the street at Rivers Casino, they could have 1,000 people there and they're indoors, and then Heinz Field will be outdoors, which all the experts say is obviously better to decrease the risk of getting COVID.
Well, there is one thing they do have to worry about, because if you remember on opening night, Chiefs-Texans, there was one fan in Arrowhead Stadium that did test positive for COVID.
Yeah, they have that liability too. None of these people want to be responsible for people getting sick due to being at a sporting event. So the politicians and the, health department people, they have that to worry about. And Rooney, he's got to worry about getting that revenue up and getting fans in seats and stuff. Plus you want to have a better atmosphere, and it probably is time. You want to be safe and careful, obviously, but I think it is time to get fans back into stadiums, and specifically Heinz Field.
Well, let's end this podcast on a little bit of a happier note. Linebacker TJ Watt named the AFC Defensive Player of the Month and is gracing the cover of Sports Illustrated. It's certainly great to see a Steeler on the cover again. Another Steeler defender on there. It was a really nice cover from what I've seen on Twitter. Chris, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, it was a really nice cover. Juju was on a cover last year, and those Sports Illustrated covers are always iconic. You remember growing up and waiting for those Sports Illustrated magazines to come in. I'm not too sure now because I don't know, the Sports Illustrated, it's not as big as it once was, right?
There's a lot of issues with the parent company and stuff like that, but I still have a box of them right underneath other boxes of Sports Illustrated stuff. So I still get them.
It's an iconic, figure, throughout, sports and whatnot. So that was good to see him get Defensive Player of the Month. And that was a good article too in Sports Illustrated. I don't know if you got a chance to read it, but a lot of good quotes there by Watt, and just talking about the art of the pass rush and making those strip sacks and punching the ball out like you see him do so many times.
Well, Chris, being that now the Steelers have no game this week, we're adept of football talk. So are you going to be watching any other games this week?
Yeah, I'm going to be watching all the games. I have to look at the schedule of who's going to be on TV and stuff. But I'll definitely be searching, flipping through games. And then on Sunday night, the Eagles play the 49ers. So, you have a little bit of get a good look at the Eagles and see what the Steelers will be facing up against in Week 5.
Yeah, I mean, it's a pretty good slate. You got the Falcons versus the Packers on Monday night, the aforementioned Eagles versus 49ers, Bills, Raiders, Patriots, Chiefs. That's certainly going to be interesting to see Cam Newton and his new team versus Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs.
Yeah, definitely. That's going to be a interesting matchup to see. Is that a 4:25 game?
Yes, it's a 4:25 game, which is kind of shocking.
Yeah, Tony Romo and Jim Nantz will probably be calling that game.
It's always fun to hear those two call games.
Yeah, Yeah, especially Romo. He's a great listen all the time. And then probably in Pittsburgh, they're going to have the Browns Cowboys game on. They'll probably have that televised.
Well, let's get a little bit of hater vision on and talk about the Ravens versus Chiefs, of course.
On Monday
Everyone,
night.
man, everyone's kind of dogging on Lamar Jackson out there. Only 97 yards passing against the Chiefs.
Yeah, that's pretty alarming for especially like a player like Jackson. And you got to start to wonder is like, can he come up? Uh, can he come through in these big games? You've seen the two playoff games, the loss to the Chargers and the loss to the Titans last year, where he had, he had a really poor performance in both of those games. Now you've seen him going against the Chiefs this past week and having a rough game. So can he beat these elite teams or can he just beat up on teams like, the Browns and Bengals?
The question is this, and you think about the past with the Steelers and the Patriots, it was almost assured when the Steelers went to Foxborough, they weren't going to win. Currently, right now, the Ravens, with Lamar Jackson at the helm, are 0-3. I'm just saying, maybe we're the new Baltimore Ravens against the top team in the AFC. That would certainly be a nice reversal of fortune.
Yeah, that would be definitely good. Like you said, the Steelers always struggled against New England, especially in Foxborough, or any playoff matchup, really. They went 0-3 against Brady and Belichick in the playoffs, and all three of them were AFC championship games. And, man, they're brutal to even think about. I don't. What was the most brutal one that was for you?
Oh man, I think the first two certainly have to be the ones. It's like I remember the Cordell Stewart experiment against Brady and the Patriots in the
2001.
2001 AFC Championship, or is that
Yeah,
it
yeah,
happened in
right.
the year 2002? But yeah,
Yeah, year 2002, but 2001 season.
I mean that was kind of like the first like taste of it, and it's just like that's typically the worst taste, but
Yeah,
man,
that would be for me the most brutal one was that first one, 2001. Just
but
because the Steelers were heavy favorites in that game, and they really should have won. The Patriots had two special teams touchdowns in that game, a punt return for a touchdown and a blocked field goal that was returned for a touchdown. And then 2004, really, the 15-1 regular season record for the Steelers, Big Ben's rookie year, they got outclassed there in the championship game. Ben against that veteran defense was just too much. And then 2016, that was up in Foxborough, and Brady him and Chris Hogan just shredded the Steelers defense.
yes, it's pick an undersized receiver to just dominate the Steelers. If you're the Patriots, it's either Edelman, Hogan. I mean, you want to count like Troy Brown as well,
Yeah, Troy Brown,
David Givens.
Deion Branch, I believe, in the 2004 game.
Also, the one thing, the '04, they all hurt, but the '01 was the first one because that was the first like Steelers playoff run that I could legitimately say that I remember.
Yeah, probably the same for me too. Yeah.
The '04 one didn't hurt as much because it was just like all right, they just went 6-10 and now they had a rookie leading them to 15-1. You kind of knew that if they get a chance to come back, they will win. Unfortunately, it wasn't at the Patriots' expense, but two Super Bowls is two Super Bowls.
Yeah, after that game, Hines Ward, remember him crying and stuff because they thought Jerome Bettis his career might have been over, but he
Yeah.
came back for that one more season, and the Steelers got one for the thumb, and Jerome Bettis won the Super Bowl in his hometown of Detroit.
I actually I remember watching the old NFL films with Bettis. He said that after the fumble against Indianapolis, you remember that whenever
Oh
one
yeah.
of the Colts got helmet on ball and
Mhm.
Nicholas Harper, if Nicholas Harper, who actually the night before, I remember this, he got stabbed in I think the knee by one of his significant others at the time, and Ben Roethlisberger made that shoestring tackle, and it was just one of those things that was just like a crazy situation. And Bettis once said, if they would have lost that game, he would have came back the next year.
Yeah, you definitely didn't want to end your career on that note. Yeah, what a crazy game that was. One of the most nerve-wracking games I've ever watched as long as I've been watching the Steelers.
Yeah, Brian McFadden, before that miss kick by Vanderjagt, saved the Steelers' life. I can't remember if it was Reggie Wayne or Marvin Harrison. You know, Peyton Manning had a long, deep ball to like the back corner.
Yeah, it was Reggie Wayne. Yeah,
it was Reggie Wayne?
Yeah, it was called Reggie Wayne.
If McFadden doesn't manage to just like somehow jar the ball loose, it would have. I don't know. I was too young for sports talk at that time, but looking back on it, you'd have to wonder, like, what would it be like for Jerome Bettis to just lose the ball at that moment?
If Twitter was around during that playoff run, or during that game specifically, excuse me, where when Bettis fumbled there against the Colts in the 2005 AFC divisional round game, man, Twitter would have been a dumpster fire.
An absolute dumpster fire. I mean, it already is. So it's not really improving much, but Steelers Twitter would have had an aneurysm.
Yeah, that would have been a crazy time. The highs and lows of that game, and just really through it all, that Super Bowl run, Twitter would have been a great place to be on if it was around in 2005, 2006 season there for the Steelers.
Well, we're now finished reminiscing about the past. We wanted to have a little bit of more happy talk because let's just say everything stinks right now, guys. No football this week, but don't worry, we have 13 weeks of coverage with you. It kind of messed up our timing, I guess, a little bit, but certainly we're still excited to give you more content every week. And that will be all for us. For Chris Ward, I'm Ty Polk. Thank you for tuning in to the Renegade Blitz. Thank you for listening to the Renegade Blitz podcast. Follow us on Twitter at Renegade Blitz, read articles on renegadeblitz.com, and like us on Facebook. Our podcast is available on YouTube.